I think it's by my watch, it says 2:03. So I think we could call this meeting to order. And we'll have a moment of,
Hi, everyone.
we'll have a moment of reflection. Okay, I would like to begin our meeting by recognizing the First Nations, Métis, and Inuit peoples of Canada as traditional stewards of the land. The municipality is located within the boundary of Treaty 18 region of 1818, which is the traditional land of the Anishinaabe, the Haudenosaunee, and Wyandot peoples. Okay, everyone has an agenda. Okay, we'll follow the usual teleconference procedures. Can everyone hear me okay?
Yeah.
Yes, I have audio now.
Oh, there's Joanne.
Hi, Joanna.
Okay, item B, the agenda. Everyone's got an agenda. Are there any additions to this agenda that anyone would like to propose? Hearing none, may I have someone to move that the agenda of today, the 21st of January, be approved as circulated? A mover?
I'll move that.
Thank you, Rob. Somebody a second?
I second.
Jesse, thank you. All in favor? No one opposed. Sabrina, I'm not sure I can do this. I only see one person at a time other than myself. I'd like to see if I can, so that people will raise their hand, you know, whatever you call it, across.
In the top right corner of my screen, if I bring my mouse up there, I have a little box that says view.
Yeah.
If you click on that and go for gallery view,
Okay.
that should give us a Brady Bunch feeling.
Oh, that's kind of interesting. All right. Now
This time, Lori is going to be Alice in the middle.
All right. The next thing I want to look at, if I may, is what do you call it? I'll try. All right. I've got you on 1/3 of my screen. Can I go full screen and see what happens there?
Mm-hmm.
Now I see everybody. So raising the hands will be good. Thank you. Does anyone have any known pecuniary interest in this particular meeting? Seeing no hands? Oh, okay. Thank you. We will move on. I'd like now to move into in camera. May I have someone make that recommended motion with regard to section 16?
I'll make that.
Well, there's Jesse first and Joanna second. Thank you, Joanne. I'll read that motion. That this board do now move into closed session in order to address matters pertaining to personal matters about an identifiable individual and labor relations. Okay, all in favor of that motion? Carried. We are now in closed session, in camera session, closed session, same thing.
Question?
I have to dig up something here. Hang on.
Question. Sabrina, I'll ask it of you. Since we're in closed session, should we be still recording?
So I'm recording it so that we are able to pull the section out and put onto YouTube. When it is recorded, though, we will pull out everything in camera, and then the original file is ditched anyways, and that will give us the beginning of the meeting, moving into closed session, and then we come out of closed session.
And
And then that will be put up on YouTube afterwards. And I have not gone live on Facebook and won't do that until we're back into out of in camera. All right, so it is now streaming live, Mr. Chair. You can continue back on with the regular agenda. And I have noted that we've returned to open session at 2:17.
Thank you very much. Now, just may I have someone make a motion that we approve, this board approves all resolutions and recommendations made in that previous closed session?
so move.
Jesse, a seconder? Laurie? All in favor? Anyone against? Carried. Okay, moving on. We have, moving on to item D in our agenda, we have a total of 6 items, and we'd like to get those on the floor to be received and on the floor. May I have someone make a motion to receive all 6 of these items? Do I have someone to make a motion? Laurie, seconder?
I'll second. It's Rob.
Any discussion on it? I'm sure there won't be. All in favor?
Yes,
Okay, carried. Thank you. All right. Everyone has received the minutes of the previous meeting, which was last year in November. Are there any errors or omissions on those minutes? Hearing none, I'll move on. May I have someone, can I have someone make a motion that this board approve those minutes as circulated? That's the minutes of the November 19th, 2020 board meeting. Someone to move? I don't see a full screen. I don't, thank
There
you.
you go.
Who moved that?
Nobody yet, but I can.
I'll move that. Nope.
Oh, thank you. And Dorothy second. All right, good. All in favor?
Yep.
Carried. Get a bit disjointed today with these screens switching around. Okay, business arising from the minutes. There are 3 items listed under E2, number 1, 2, and 3. I would like to exercise executive privilege and do these in reverse order. Number 3 first, that's the report from the Fall Trustee Council, which I believe, Laurie, you went to. Could you fill us in on what happened?
I actually sent a report to that came out with the second agenda. I don't know if Sabrina, you can bring that up on the screen.
Sorry, I may have missed that. Yeah, I
Ready?
didn't scroll down far enough. No.
So the one of the reasons I wanted to attend was to understand the difference between the new board assemblies with the new OLS as opposed to the trustee councils. In effect, they're doing the same thing as they have in the past. They're just meeting a little bit more frequently, 3 times a year rather than twice. And they're now based on population as opposed to region. So if we attend these, and they're obviously all electronic. So it works well to handle it by population. The structure of the board, the OLS board, will be derived from these various assemblies. And I think it's, I forget, maybe 1 or 2 people each from each of those assemblies will be elected onto the OLS board, which in itself will be meeting electronically for obvious reasons, since it's covering the entire province. To be eligible to sit on the board, you have to be an appointee from a library. So if we want the ability to participate in that election to become part of the OLS board, we would have to designate individual as our appointee, as opposed to simply suggesting somebody attend a meeting in future. So it would be up to the board to decide if they wanted to do that. Could you scroll down? Sabrina, I forgot to print a copy of this for my my benefit. So the Ontario Library Boards Association, which is a part of the Ontario Library Association, is handling it, having its boot camp Saturday, February 6th. And that's also on the agenda to, because we approved in November, I believe, some money to support attendance, which of course will be virtual at that session. I think that comes up later. The Federation of Ontario Public Libraries reported that they had lobbied and had successfully lobbied to include libraries remaining under development charges as opposed to being moved to the community benefits charge. So I believe that that is good news. And then there's a education segment from the meeting where people discussed how they were addressing and responding to COVID. I was pleased to note that our action plan was used as an example of how that was handled well. And as always, the most interesting part of these meetings is the roundtable. And there was quite a bit of discussion about strategic planning under COVID and also creating better relations with various community stakeholders and partners. So that's always the most interesting part, and usually about 50% of the meeting. So a good hour and a half of just people contributing what's happening in their area and asking questions of each other. That's all I had to say.
Laurie, any questions for Laurie? Okay. With that in mind, coming back to that item, you mentioned this boot camp. This was where we set aside, I think, $750, if I'm not mistaken. Is there anything on that, Sabrina, you'd like to mention, for instance, of what's in, do you know what's involved?
I do have the schedule that was in the revised agenda. And one thing that may be of interest, they're offering an institutional rate. And if I move the 750 in with the staff costs, it actually gives the opportunity for any board members, up to all of us, to attend if you would like to. So that's something that we're looking at is the institutional option as opposed to just sending designated members. It would just be a link and then anybody could participate. But I do have the schedule that's here on the screen now. So it'll be the opening remarks, then it'll be looking at municipal boards for libraries and effective working, looking at some finance, keeping up with the CFO, libraries responding quickly to community changing needs, specifically around the pandemic. And then we have the leaving no one behind, ensuring representation and accessibility on your board. And then if anybody was interested in a bit more detail, the next 2 pages actually had the write-ups on there. So I know last year we had Joanne. I think it was Joanne who attended. Nope, so it was Odine and Dorothy and Gary.
I'll start the ball rolling and I say I will stick my name in there, but I like that idea of having it open for everybody, or it could be all of us or more than one.
Mm-hmm.
So you got my name on there and you'll fill us in on details or how to sign up for the set trip in due course.
Certainly. So I can register people if we choose to go for the institutional rate and pass that on. We said that we would do up to 3 members. So the question that I had is if there are 3 members who want to attend or more, then we know which direction we're going.
Are there 3 men? Laurie will attend.
No, I have a question actually. What is the cost of the institutional registration?
The institutional rate is 2,000. By time we have all of our staff that usually are attending, it's actually a good price for us.
Yeah. There were a couple sessions there I thought I would be interested in as well if we do go for the institutional membership registration.
And then there are some sessions, this is just the board boot camp, but that doesn't mean that there aren't other sessions throughout the rest of the week that don't deal with board matters and governance as well. So if you purchase the institutional rate, you also have access, I believe it's over a month or a period after that, that you can go back. So not everybody has to commit to attending in the first few days when it's actually running. Of course, if we can participate live, then it gives the opportunity for Q&A live, but it does mean that we can go back and watch things at a later point if you're not available on a Thursday, for example, and you found a governance that was interesting. It works much better for the staff because then we don't have to actually do coverage. Staff can attend over the month whenever it suits them to be in a session.
Do I hear any other volunteers? We'll leave it open. How late, what's our deadline for registration?
I am going to be registering soon because it is in a week. But I think if we know that we have 2 people who are interested right now on the board, then what I can do is send all the information off and we'll just do the institutional rate once I get back from the staff to see how many staff were looking at specific sessions.
Okay, that sounds good. All right, with that, we're finished with that part. Okay, the third item is item number 1, which Sabrina designated as Action Plan 2021 and any required changes. Now, if I may, I'd like to actually speak to that for a moment, because actually this really should be a discussion of a board resolution made at the last November meeting. And that's the resolution number 2020-103. And it directed this board to hold a meeting between the council and the board, the library board, to discuss priorities for the next 12 to 18 months. Now, I've given a lot of thought to that particular resolution immediately after our meeting. And I discussed it by internet with Laurie and Jesse, because those are the 2 people who they moved and seconded that motion. The whole board passed it. But I'm saying this fairly bluntly now, I believe that this decision by the board was wrong, and I believe it should be rescinded. Let me give you some of the reasons I have for making this statement. Number 1, a full meeting of council and board, it presents logistical problems. And I want you to think about this. Who would be the host of the meeting? It'll be a virtual meeting at this point. Who would be the host? And what's also very important is who would chair the meeting? Second thing, would the council tell us any more about their priorities than the mayor and the deputy mayor, who's scheduled to be in that, any more than they would tell us in the meetings that are set up, are planned for myself, Laurie, and Sabrina to meet with them over the next few months? It's another little thing to think about. One of the reasons, again, for my thinking this decision is wrong, would there be time to discuss those priorities as they're presented, or if they're presented? And this would be an open meeting. Remember, it's council and board. It would be an open meeting. Would the public have an opportunity to discuss those priorities? And would anyone on council explain their priorities in more detail than Mayor Soever, than he did in his November 27th and year-end discussion of the objectives, their objectives, with Rosalie Gosling? It seemed to me that these objectives and priorities were spelled out at that time, or over those two times. Number one, transportation master plan, growth master strategy, the municipal drainage plan. I heard somebody today saying that's one of the more important things coming up in the town of Blue Mountains. Their economic development plan, integrated community sustainability plan, community hubs as part of the leisure activities plan. Just going on, I'm reading from some notes here. The quarterly meetings that are planned with the mayor, deputy mayor, and the CAO, they are a better way to discuss priorities. It'll be 3-on-3. Those meetings would be less formal and more in line with what Jesse touched on a way back when. It's a meeting over a cup of coffee. Probably would be much more productive. Now, I have to pause here, think for a minute. I normally would not approach this board with a motion to rescind unless I already had a seconder lined up. I am asking for one of you to second the motion I'm about to make so that we can get it on the floor and open for discussion. I would point out that you do not necessarily have to agree with me to second my motion. Formally, I would like to make the following motion: that this board rescind resolution number 2020-103 dated November the 19th, 2020. May I have someone to second that motion, please?
I'll second that motion.
Thank you, Gary. Okay, the motion is now on the floor. You've heard my comments, my thoughts on it. Is there anything any would like to say? It's not a big deal, you know, to rescind a motion. It just means we made a mistake or whatever. Small mistake or big mistake, but that's all it is. It's nothing special. It has been done before.
Well, it may not be a mistake. It could be simply bad timing as opposed to a mistake.
Could you explain that, Jess?
Well, currently, it's not feasible to meet face to face.
We're not talking about face-to-face. We're talking about virtual.
Sorry, I don't understand that.
The meetings will be virtual in the next foreseeable future, won't they?
Well, I have to say that the kind of, as you alluded to, Morris, the kind of meeting that I was thinking of works best on a personal face-to-face contact basis. That's been my experience and probably most people's experience. A lot more can be accomplished by a chat between two people than over the telephone, put it that way. So I don't, that's what I meant. That's what I meant when I talked about the timing being wrong, in the sense that I don't think what I had in mind would work very well from a virtual perspective.
Could I ask you a question? What is your opinion? In your opinion, when will this pandemic shutdown, et cetera, be over?
Well, I have some private inside information about that.
That's good. Would it be 1 month or 6 months?
No,
or a year?
no. My source is God. God knows, I don't.
Good. Maybe we can get him to join the meeting.
I'm sure he's here.
I'm sorry, Justin, make your point. What are you saying?
What I'm saying is that I understand where you're coming from. I think it was my concept in the first instance. And I think that where there are, how shall I put this? Where there are difficult or troubling issues between the board on the one hand and council on the other, that they can be more easily dealt with over a cup of coffee than on a formal basis. Now, there are some roadblocks to that sort of an informal meeting, that is to say, statutory roadblocks. Nevertheless, all that being said, when you talk about rescinding the motion, my reaction was, well, I think the idea was a good one, but maybe the timing is wrong because it's not going to work on a virtual basis. That's what I meant. Those are my comments.
Okay, anyone else? Rob?
I think all the points you made are good, Mr. Chair, and I think the place to start is with an informal. I think your concept of the four, we can do that because we don't have a quorum. Therefore, we don't have to make it a public meeting. We're seeing more of this type of thing, so I think your concept is a good one. And I agree with Jesse. I think this works better over a cup of coffee, but we'll have to wait for that. And if you want to continue with the less formal version that you were talking about, I think this is the perfect answer. So I would support your motion.
Thank you, Rob. And I would point out that what you call the informal ones are already booked. They're authorized by the board.
Yes.
Anyone else? Laurie?
And on the question of the quarterly meetings, I know that we have them in our plan, and I believe we did last year as well, but have not managed to get one set up. Can anyone give us any information on the possibility of that moving forward?
Sabrina?
I think now it's just a case of realizing that 2021 is going to be virtual. So having a meeting with the chair, vice chair, myself, with the CEO, the mayor, I'm sorry, the CAO, the mayor, and the deputy mayor, it's just going to be a virtual one. So we were waiting in the beginning when we had planned to do this because the pandemic was new and unknown. Then the summer just got quite busy. And then we were into budget season. So it seems like you're always behind the 8 ball trying to schedule a meeting. But now I think it's just a case that if we would like to do this, that we're just acknowledging that we're going to be meeting virtually.
Thank you. If I may interject here, we're not voting on or discussing whether or not it will be a virtual meeting. Whether it's a virtual meeting or I'll call it face-to-face, I'm of a very strong opinion it just wouldn't work. Gary?
I concur with you, Rob. I think that the timing is wrong, and I think.
Sorry, I can't hear you.
Sorry, this council will have a lot to deal with, and I think we're better to rescind the motion and just go with informal meetings as we can. This pandemic's going to take some time to play out yet, so this year is going to be a little bit like last year.
Thank you, Gary. I would point out that what I'm suggesting, that a full board and committee and council meeting will not work. I see Rob is nodding, and I think he can understand. He sits on the council. I mean, he's on the council dais up there. He said, "I've been there," and they're talking down to us. I would not sit in that meeting as a face-to-face equal basis and have to look up. I mean, I respect the council, the mayor, and all members of council, but I would be in a secondary position. Who's going to host the thing? Who's going to chair it?
If I could, Mr. Chair, for Grey County had a similar idea in mind for something. When they talk to facilitators, because that was the idea, have a facilitator come in instead of one or the other chairing. And they said, don't do this over Zoom or over Teams. Wait till you can do it in person. So that's where I'm drawing my view of it from. And that's why I'm agreeing with you is that we've already had the experience and talking to people who do have experience, and they say it's better to wait and not have one side or the other take the lead. And maybe we bring in a facilitator in answer to your question about who would chair. And maybe that's the best answer. Yeah.
I would agree with you, Rob. If in fact there were points of disagreement between the two boards, if there was in fact. But in fact, at this point, I don't think there is. Something came up on Facebook, and I read a couple of very complimentary things about the fact that we're not, it's on budget. I'm not getting into that detail, but it's the first time in what 3 years I've heard a negative word about the library. We don't have any problem with council, and not hearing from them, they don't appear to have any problems with us, and that's I can express that by the fact that they accepted our budget for one thing, with, I believe, Sabrina, virtually no problem. Jesse, you have something else to say?
Yeah, I'm not saying I'm disagreeing with you at all, but I'm trying to understand more clearly. Is the reason for your motion because of logistical issues, or because there is really nothing that needs to be discussed on a one-to-one basis?
It is logistical. Jesse, it just doesn't work with them sitting there and us sitting here, and who's going to lead it. That's all. It just doesn't work.
You're saying it doesn't work on a virtual basis? Is that what you mean?
No, it wouldn't work on any basis, but except the fact that we're in virtual, everything will be virtual now for the next X number of months.
Yeah.
There's no point in talking about priorities. There's no point in doing it in the end of November, is there?
So, all right. So what I'm hearing you saying is, let's revisit it perhaps at some later date.
No, you're not hearing that. What you're hearing me say is it is, in my mind, it is not the right way to talk to council. We talk in small groups and we discuss with them, shall I say, over that proverbial cup of coffee.
If I may, Mr.
You're
Chair.
saying that's the way to do it? I happen to agree with that, Morris.
Thank you. Sabrina, yes, you were before.
So the action plan, which is number 2.3, is talking about holding the quarterly meetings between the chair, vice chair, CEO, and mayor, deputy mayor, and CAO. And I think that meeting will also give us next steps that have to naturally fall out of it. So if something is going to come that we need to have a full board and council meeting, or council needs to be making decisions in council chambers and the board needs to be making decisions here, those will all be things that fall out of those meetings. So I don't think we have to dictate what the next steps are until we've actually started the process of having the regular small meetings with that executive.
Thank you, Sabrina. Laurie, you had something to say? You wish to say?
Yeah, my thoughts are really around the need for us as a board to develop a better, not sure what the word is, one-to-one relationship or a better board to council relationship. I don't want us to simply be showing ourselves to councilors when we're asking for money. And I want to have a relationship with them. And I think Jesse's original thoughts, as I understood them last meeting, was let's start that process by having an informal, in fact, get together between the board members and council members. But as it's been pointed out, that one can't really do that once you have quorum, and it becomes you lose the informality and the opportunity to build relationship, and now you'd be doing something quite formal. So the way we still have the need to build the relationships, and I think perhaps the quarterly meetings, as we've had in the action plan now for a couple of years, need to go ahead. I understand that we didn't do them last year because we were all overwhelmed. And then we're also all trying to figure out how to have relationships in a virtual environment like this. I think we've kind of figured it out 10 months later, and that now is the time to proceed with those quarterly meetings, as you say, chair, vice chair, CEO, mayor, deputy mayor, CAO. And we might start figuring out how to launch that, how to have some discussions around priorities. I think in particular, I'd be interested in understanding better about where they think they're going with the community hubs and how that relates to the libraries, and to make sure that they understand that we think it's important that the library museum are part of that process.
You agree, Laurie, that you and I and Sabrina could get that information from Sean Everett and the mayor and Rob? I'm not excluding
Absolutely.
you, Rob, it's just you're there. So, but don't you think we could get that same information much faster, much nicer, much quicker than sitting down and trying to get the same information from 7 people sitting up there? Would you
Yeah, that's what I
agree?
just said.
Thank you. By the way, we haven't heard from Dorothy or Joanne in this subject.
So I wasn't at the last meeting for the original conversation, but I think it just makes sense that you can build relationships more quickly and more solidly in a smaller, less formal atmosphere than everybody, getting multiple people over Zoom. So for that reason, I would agree with what I think everybody is saying, is that we hold off until such an arrangement can occur.
May I ask you then, will you agree with my motion? Vote in favor of my motion?
I have to hear it again.
Certainly. Where is it? I would like to move that this board rescind resolution number 2020-103 dated November the 19th, 2020.
Question about that?
I'm sorry?
I have a question.
Of course.
Is it the intent of your motion that that if rescinded, that will be permanent?
Yes.
If I may on that one,
That
all we are
motion's-
doing is rescinding the resolution that includes it in the action plan. It was not a motion to make the meeting happen that day. In context of where it fell in the agenda, it was a motion to put it into the action plan. So all this is going to do is remove it from the action plan 2021.
If I may, Sabrina, no, I disagree with you. The board made a motion to have a meeting, to set up a meeting between this library board and council. That's all they did. The board did not say anything about putting it in the action plan. I'm not criticizing you because it was the right thing to do, but you elected to put it in the action plan yourself. Now, this is why in the agenda, you put it as a discussion of the action plan item. I said to myself, no, we're not talking about that. We're talking about the motion. If we rescind this motion, automatically it comes off the action plan.
If I may, Mr. Chair, I think similarly that if we rescind it, it comes off the action plan. That's simply the flip side of the coin, that when we passed it, it went on the action plan. So I don't think that was something that Sabrina took in unauthorized stand. She did what with board directed.
No. I'm not saying that. No, I didn't mean that in any form at all. It was an automatic thing that was done. And it will automatically come off if and when we rescind this motion. Joanne, did I hear from you?
I'm quite speechless because there seems to be a lot of vocabulary that has been dispensed on the motion in the first place. As I recall, last November, it was what's a quorum, what's not a quorum, what we can do, what we can't do. And now, on further reflection, we want to take it away. I'm quite confused, and I will go with the majority. I was not, perhaps I'm a fatalist or negative, but in the times that we have worked with members of the council, we were misguided, and all our meetings came to naught. So maybe I'm too much of a fatalist. So I would support the rescinding of this motion. And sorry, Laurie, I know you are positive and want to work with people, but I'd rather work in our board where things could actually happen.
Lori?
I just want to say, that I think one of the reasons we did not have any success early on regarding the facilities is because we found ourselves working with 100% new council, where we had, we believe we had support from the old council. And that's because we had I think a relationship that had grown quite good over time with the old council. And all I'm saying is we need to develop those relationships now, because the support of our primary funder is absolutely essential to all of our plans. And frankly, the work of the public library board, the work of the public library is essential to the success of this community. So it is an important place to have our relationships, and so I just like to see those quarterly meetings start informally, over a cup of coffee in our own living rooms, so that we start to build that relationship, and we're better positioned with the town to move forward in concert on shared priorities.
Thank you, Lori, but the question is not whether or not we will go ahead with the informal meeting. They will go ahead as long as they're in our action plan.
Good.
The question is, I'm saying we should not try to go ahead with a full council, full board, face-to-face or virtual meeting.
Maybe I'm not clear. I support your motion, Morris.
I know you do, yes. Lori, you're waving your hand at me. Oh, no, that's Jesse, pardon me. Wrong hand.
I have always had the impression, Morris, from many things that you've said, that our board wants at all costs to avoid giving the impression that we're coming to council cap in hand, so to speak, that we are partners or associates as opposed to a creature of the board, of the council. So that, I think, was what underlay the original concept that resulted in the motion being passed. That having been said, I want to add that since I've been on the board and I've come to know and respect the chair's views on things, that on that basis, I'm going to support it.
Thank you. Anyone else before I call for the question? All in favor of the motion? Raise their hand. I'm counting 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and with myself is 6. 6, is that right?
It's probably a majority.
Well, it is a majority. Thank you. The motion is carried. That motion of November 19th is now rescinded, and automatically, Sabrina, you will take it off the 2021 action plan. Thank
Yes.
you. Okay, we can now move on. I need a bigger desk here. That was the good part. Is there any deputations, Sabrina?
We just need to, move and second the receiving of the discussions for business arising.
Okay, yes, we need someone to move that we receive the discussions of as information on that arose out of the minutes. Someone to move.
I'll move,
Thank
Mr.
you,
Chair.
Rob. Seconder.
I'll second.
Thanks, Lori. All in favor? Carried. Carried, Dorothy. Sorry, I'm a little moving fast here. Any deputations?
Whatever.
Sabrina, deputations?
No, we have none.
and no public that I'm aware of.
Nope, there are no public who are present on the call.
And any correspondence?
There are correspondence, but nothing that made it in as of the date. It is a Souls letter that came in, much describing what Lori had talked about earlier about the OLS, and I'll have that on our next meeting. It wasn't time sensitive.
Excuse me. Okay, thank you. We'll move on to section G. This is the part that Sabrina and I will work out, but basically, we don't have any subcommittees anymore. So we don't have subcommittee reports. And they were basically the trigger for various discussions, items to discuss, et cetera, et cetera. At least they used to leave it that way. Sabrina is right. We're going to gear everything, or gear most of everything we talk about on the 2021 action plan. No. And I'm just running through this sequence here. The action plan 2020, final report, we've had that. Any questions of Sabrina on the 2020 action plan? Sorry, I've got to get. Okay, how about the 2021 update? Anything on that, Sabrina?
Unless there are questions. The 2021 is just really started, so we are right at the beginning. We have obviously completed a few items, and these were, sorry, I'm just scrolling through here. These were mostly because we had pushed some efforts that we intended to do later in the year to be right up in front in January because of the new lockdown by the province. The lockdown is currently set to expire in mid-February. They are returning our school board back to school on Monday, and the lockdown will continue for another few weeks. The fact that our school board is going back in, we assume that we'll be opening up sometime in February, but the province is currently the one making those decisions. And then we do have policies that identify similar and in line with the town. If the town of Blue Mountains and our health unit are in gray or red zones, that we are curbside only. Currently, we would be closer to an orange zone if it wasn't for the provincial lockdown. So based on that, we did end up moving forward with some items that we knew we should push out to try to keep our service model at the same level. So our report will have to be altered because we are now at 82 instead of 83. But that means we'll actually be a little bit more successful. But given that we're only a few weeks in, we're at 7% with 6 items, 5 of which we did not anticipate doing in January. So I think we're doing well. Unless there are specific questions on the actual plan, I think we can proceed.
Okay, good. I'm just touching on these items. Are these board meetings are still live streamed? How long are we going to do this, Sabrina?
That is actually G2.
Right. Yeah, that's what I meant. Is this a question we put to the board? Does any board members have any thoughts on it?
So the resolution, if I may, and decision that was made is that we would do a pilot through 2020. We would look at our success and numbers and see if there has been any uptake. Live stream is not usually as successful as those that go back. We can look at, I'm just looking to see where our numbers are. We can look to see what our numbers are, and I believe that we have Hannah on the call and can share some of that with us. More people have been going back and viewing on YouTube. We are also removing it from YouTube when the next board meeting comes out. So it's up for typically a month. November in this case was 2 months.
Yeah.
Hannah, are you on the call? Oh, we might have lost her. But I know that we had at our previous one about 6 people that had watched. It's not an extensive amount of numbers. So it is something that if you are interested in continuing, we can certainly do. We've had no uptake for people asking to participate live as a deputation or as a community input on the agenda during the time that we've been virtual, but that's not something that we have a lot of uptake on normally. It's usually if there's a problem and then we hear from the community.
Right.
So I leave it now to the board to make decisions if you would like to continue the pilot through our point where we have to be virtual, or if you'd like to end that now that 2020 is over.
Well, thank you. Does anyone have any strong feelings on live streaming?
Couldn't hear you.
Oh, I'm sorry. Does anyone on the board have strong feelings whether or not we stay with live streaming? Rob?
I just a question really, would it be possible that we would make it available if someone asked without having to have it as a regular thing if we decided that wasn't the best way to go about this?
The recording is not a legal document, so it isn't something that we do normally, but certainly if the board wishes to do that, we could. If we do that, then I would recommend that there is a policy that identifies that this is only during the point when we're not open to the public, because we could easily have people saying, I can't make a meeting at said time, I want a video of it, and we don't have the capability of doing that outside of a Zoom meeting.
Question, Sabrina.
Go ahead.
Mr. Chair.
Yep.
Are we legally obligated to live stream under the current pandemic rules?
No. This is us trying to go above and beyond to meet our strategic plan of transparency and accountability of communication.
I have not spoken with anyone who said to me, I saw you on whatever, you know. Dorothy?
So Sabrina, even if we don't live stream, we would still post to YouTube at some later point. Is that right?
All of these are up for discussion. So when we can live stream, there's been one case, I think it was the September meeting. For some reason, the live stream just could not, there was a draw on our internet. We could not get it running. And we only did YouTube. There was no October meeting. The November meeting, we were able to do both. In this case, we are currently live streaming and intend to put it up onto YouTube. But certainly the board could make a decision that it's not live streamed on Facebook, which you do have to be a member of Facebook. It's free, but you still have to have an account, and only put it onto YouTube, which would be after the fact, and it happens sometime between that night or the next morning, depending on staffing and how much time we have to actually do the video. It takes about an hour and a half to 2 hours to render it. It's almost a minute for minute, pretty darn close to it. So if we have a 4-hour meeting, there's a staff person who's here that night, or we do it in the morning. So I would say if we say we're going to do it, we should say within 24 hours, just so I don't have to keep a staff person here until 10 or 11 o'clock at night if needed.
Mhm,
That's good
mhm.
information. Anyone else, Dorothy? Yeah? No?
No, that's good. I'm ambivalent about live streaming, but I do like the ability to watch it on YouTube. I've been able to access that a few times when I've had to miss a meeting, and I find you get more out of that than reading the minutes.
If I may,
Gary?
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
just before Gary goes, the Public Libraries Act clearly states that a board meeting has to be open. That's all that open is. We define what open is. Unfortunately, there is no clarification on that piece. But the general consensus, and the consensus that I have followed, is that by offering any member of the public who would like to attend access to log in, that is meeting open. So the live stream or the YouTube is secondary. So we still meet the official identification of open, because there is no member of the public being turned away simply because we've moved to a Zoom meeting versus being on site. So everything else is secondary, just so that you are clear that we do meet in either case. We are meeting the Public Libraries Act.
Thank you. Gary, I think you had something to say?
Yeah. Yeah, I'm a bit ambivalent too, and I supported it last, whatever it was, September, to try it as a pilot. And an interim thing. The numbers to me really aren't there. They might grow in the future. This is something library boards may have to do in future, but given all the staff time, I'm not sure it's really necessary at this point. Those are my comments.
Thank you, Gary. I didn't get all of that, but however, Laurie?
I think it makes sense to continue to record and make the recording available in the interests of accountability and transparency. I agree with Dorothy's comment that reading minutes afterwards doesn't really shed much light on the board's thinking. It's just, pretty black and white. I don't have a strong feeling about whether it should be posted on YouTube and or live streamed. I think we can just take a look at the numbers and maybe balance that with the staff effort. And who's watching while we're meeting and who's following up afterwards. I certainly agree that we don't need to rush it out in the same day, and having it doesn't, even more than 24 hours in terms of getting it out there would suit me fine, so long as it's within a couple of days.
Rob?
Sorry. I'm not so keen on the live stream if nobody's watching it, but I think in the interest of transparency, having it on YouTube or some other means for people to be able to watch is preferable to not having it available.
Good, thank you. Joanne, you've
Yes, the question almost through you to Jesse through his God knows facility. I'm concerned about post-pandemic because I'm hopeful that it will end. Are we establishing a precedent for the future where we must film our sessions and make them open to everyone, both in, actually and on computer?
I can answer that one, Mr. Chair. No. Not only that, but our pilot, we were clear to state that we don't have the capability in Ellie Shore or within the Blue Mountains Public Library to record a board meeting under normal situations. It would take quite an amount of infrastructure to put in. I know when the town put theirs into council chambers, it was an excessive, not excessive, but a large amount of funds to do that, as well as a large amount of training. So anybody who wants to work the system has to have training. There's often IT available. So it isn't even a case that we would be able to access that end without having some kind of financial obligation to do so. So it has never been the intention that we would have a broadcast system. It was something entertained if there was an addition put on and we were working with Ellie Shore and having new wiring put in, because that's the time to do it, not try to do it in an older building. But at this point, when the pandemic ends and we move back to the boardroom, we are doing business as usual in the boardroom.
Thank you.
Rob?
Yeah, just what Sabrina said is true. Hundreds of people watch a council meeting, 300, 400, 500. We get numbers every month. This is a different situation. My comments earlier were meant for during the period of the pandemic. Once it's over, I think we're back to the old way, not the old fashioned way, sorry, but to what we were doing before.
Thank you. I think, Laurie, yes?
I thought I understood, Sabrina, that we had quite a good crowd watching the live stream in the last meeting, and that exceeded the crowd that watched afterwards. Or am I getting my numbers mixed?
We did actually have a larger number on the live stream in November. The main issue I would say with the live stream is people are interested because it's happening now. So yes, numbers may be higher then. But the ability to go back and find it later is very difficult. It's buried in Facebook and you have to scroll and drill down, which is why we also have been putting it up on YouTube. So where you may have, 10 or 15 people watching on live stream, which is more than we typically have here in the building, which is fantastic. You may then have 6 people watch on YouTube, and even that is more than we typically have in the building. It's a busy meeting if you have 2 people that come. So we put it on YouTube because it's easily accessible later. And then we've been live streaming because it pops up on anyone who's on Facebook to say, hey, did you know that the Blue Mountains Public Library Board meeting is currently live streaming? And some people will watch. From a case of labor, obviously live streaming is the easiest because we do nothing. It's there, it's up, and it's done, for better or worse. And then the YouTube, we can make edits. We can clean things up a little bit. So for example, we're going to be showing a video in this meeting. The live streaming of a on-site digital format may not be clean. And the result will be that our staff will actually go in and edit and take out the choppy video and put in the clean video and re-upload that. It won't alter the actual meeting. We do take off if there's time waiting to come into the meeting or a few minutes at the end of the meeting. We never change the actual meeting. Today, for example, we were not able to live stream the beginning of the meeting because we immediately went into closed session, and that would have then been broadcast, but we recorded it. And at the end of this meeting, we'll pull out the conversations that were the closed session, and then you will actually be able to see when our chair called us to order, that everyone was present, that we went through the moment of silence and the Indigenous acknowledgement and all of those pieces before going in. In the past month, we've had 119 people who have viewed our last meeting. So that just came up for me. So we are having people who are watching it. I think it's a good piece. It's just a case if it's something we want to continue, and if we want to do both formats or just the YouTube. I am fine with doing both formats. I'm also fine with beginning to link our board documents to the YouTube. That's something we haven't done. You have to actually go to our YouTube page yourself and pull it up. But just like when you go to the event calendar and it would say, the agenda package is here, the minutes are here, and the key messages are here, similar to the way the town has with the video, we can actually put a link onto that that brings you to that YouTube video if that's something we wanted to do, and if we were going to keep it up longer than just the 1 month.
Okay, thank you, Sabrina. I'd like, first of all, if I may just identify, what is our question? Is our question, do we drop live streaming or carry on? That's one question, I think. And if we drop live streaming, do we carry on with YouTube? Are those the right questions, Sabrina?
The question at this point is that at the end of this meeting, we are done with our pilot and nothing will happen. So we make a decision today if we would like to continue this throughout the pandemic. And it would be while we are not meeting face-to-face in the boardroom. And then I am fine with you making decisions on which format or leaving that to the staff to determine the format. But at this point, just so you know, this is the last meeting that's scheduled to be in this format based on the resolution in 2020.
Lori?
I propose a motion to consider
Yes.
that the
Please.
board continue to live stream and record board meetings while we are meeting virtually, and the recording be posted to YouTube within X number of days of the meeting. And I would let Sabrina suggest the timing.
Thank you, Sabrina. You got a note of that. Is there a seconder to that motion? Rob, seconds. I think we've had
Second
enough.
that.
I'm sorry. I think Dorothy, will you have something to say? Dorothy, no, never mind. I think we've had enough discussion.
No, I was just seconding, but it's fine.
Okay, we've had enough discussion, I think, on this particular item. Are you ready for the question? All in favor? Raise your hand. Against? Oh, yeah, against. Against? That is carried. That was 4-2, 4-1, pardon me. 4-2. Okay, what was the other thing, Sabrina, we had to do?
Having to do with this item, there's nothing else, so it would just be moving down the agenda.
Thank you. Whew. I think we've done nothing to do in G3. We've handled that, haven't we? G4. We've handled the CEO evaluation, etc. We've done that. Nothing there. I'm not sure, Sabrina, you'd have to fill me in here. Planning dates due to provincial lockdown. Is there anything we have to decide on that?
So we have started moving forward, like I said, on the action plan, and started adjusting some of the dates that we think things should happen. We anticipated, excuse me, we anticipated that we would have closures like we're doing right now with the lockdown. We hoped they would not be extensive, but in the time we've started shifting some of our workload around. So some items that we said would be in June might now be completed like we did in January. And then we may also find other issues that, some of these items just start getting pushed back because the vendor can't come in now for 2 months. And it won't happen until, July, when we said we were going to have an issue in the building handled in May. So just so that we know that some of this sort of planned work specifically around our programs are happening, but really across everything on the action plan. The dates are fluid. The issues are what we're trying to hit. So the action items, what we're trying to hit, the dates are when we hope to have them by, and really to have it as sort of a work plan. So that work plan, as we know, is fluid with the pandemic.
Jesse? Sorry, Jesse, I think I thought you said you were going to say something.
No,
Okay. All right. So am I reading you right, Sabrina, that we can kind of leave the action plan dates, et cetera, as is right now, and maybe
Yes.
we will revisit them every month?
We do revisit. We don't usually adjust those.
No.
We work within them, and if it hasn't been achieved by a date, then we certainly report back on why. What we're looking for is that it's completed by the end of 21 and that the dates are our targets, but sometimes they are moving in a pandemic.
Thank you. Okay, that's enough of that. We will move on, if I may, to item H. The first item on there is,
We just have the motion.
oh,
And
darn,
actually,
I keep forgetting about that.
I think, Morris, you started this discussion by saying we'd have to schedule things from the action plan into future board meetings. So is that something that you and Sabrina will be sorting out over the next little while?
No, that wasn't my intention. I just felt the action plan could stay as is right now with the items and the dates. And they would be, or Sabrina would bring probably bring adjusted dates to us as the months went on. Is that okay?
Actually, I think my question was different from your answer.
It must be this Zoom meeting stuff.
What I was really thinking, I'm looking at, for example, I'll take the quarterly meetings with the mayor, deputy, and CAO and saying, well, we said they would be quarterly, so they should get plugged into our board meetings at such a basis that we're planning for these on a quarterly basis. So it would come up, I mean, for example, we could be putting the first discussion in our February board meeting with the idea that we're trying to meet with those people from the town by the end of the first quarter. So I'm really just asking how we're moving the planning of agenda items that used to be in committee hands onto the board agenda.
If I may, I can
Yeah.
respond to that as well, Mr. Chair. So the section G, and this is the first time we've done this now that we're not doing committees. So certainly if there is feedback, certainly please share with us so that we can make it more functional for the board. But the intention that I had when developing this agenda and sharing this idea with Morris was that G1 will be our action plan update, which is usually the how are we doing, what have we achieved, are we on target? We then have G2, 3, 4, and 5, and these letters will shift next month because we had a in-camera in the beginning, so it did push it back. But point 2, point 3, point 4, and point 5 will stay as each of the strategic plan goals. Communication, vibrant spaces, and organizational capacity used to be committees. Now it's really going to be a case of, do we have a discussion item where something has come up and that would typically have been a committee discussion with recommendations coming back to the board? We'll be having those as a whole here at this meeting. And if there's a report that we need to be, asking for or bringing back, that will go in, be it an administrative report or a governance report, if the board asks certain members to go forward and do something as a pseudo ad hoc committee or an ad hoc committee. I will also be plugging into this any of the key items that are coming up on our action plan, so nothing does get missed. So this will really be, I would anticipate, the bulk of our meetings. Our meetings had been running about an hour and a half to 2.5 hours on a longer day, but we also had a committee meeting that might be running an hour to 3 hours with 3 committees. So I don't think that this board is going to end up having 5-hour meetings, but I do think that if it's going to be lengthened for this type of work, this is where it's going to fall, is in this section. So nothing should get lost. It should all be added in. We should have some clear points of what we want to discuss identified. But then, of course, when we're coming through the action plan updates, something might come out of that the board wants to talk about. And if there's anything that needs to be added to the agenda, that can always happen through the normal agenda approval process.
Thank you, Sabrina. Laurie, I can respond to your question or comments. Remember, this is our first meeting for 2021, and this part is it's kind of new as to what we were doing, and it's really underlying it, in my opinion, is sort of items on the action plan that we decided should go on the action plan. They're there, and I would not be doing my job, and maybe the vice chair wouldn't be doing her job either, if we did not remind and ask Sabrina as our contact person. Sabrina, we've got quarterly meetings due. When are we going to have that meeting with the mayor? Ask Sabrina, if I do it right, to set up the meeting if she can. And if she can't get an answer, then I will write to the mayor and say, look, you've seen our action plan, you've seen our minutes, you've seen our action plan. We want a quarterly meeting. You didn't disagree with it. When can we have a meeting? Simple as that. Or talk to Rob. Of course, we talk to him all the time.
And I was going to say the easiest thing probably, Sabrina, is just contact Krista Royal. She has access to our schedules, and she will put the meeting in and tell us when it is. That's how it works.
We have had no issues with scheduling meetings. We just selected in 2020 not to move forward because we wanted to do the face-to-face. But now we realize that even this smaller meeting, it's not going to happen face-to-face. So I have no concerns that we'll be able to get the meeting when we want.
Right. It's not the how to, Rob. It's just the when is what was the thing. And we would have touched on that in any case, Sabrina. Okay.
My questions were more about, when does the board talk about the content of that meeting so that we are prepared when we actually have it?
The content, well, you can't talk about the content of the meeting until we've had the meeting. In which case, if we have the meeting on the 1st of March, you won't talk about it until the March meeting.
But don't we want to have some discussion in preparation of the meeting so that we are raising topics that we think we'd like to discuss?
Well, I hear what you're saying. Now, this section of the agenda is really the area, the time, the section, in which case when you've got, not you personally, but if anyone has something they want to raise, this is the section to bring it to my attention and or probably and Sabrina's. I'd like this on the next agenda. We want to discuss such and such with the mayor.
Moving forward, Mr. Chair, if I may, I'll pull it back up again, but the agenda has currently listed, something was a report, so we know that we're talking about a report. Something was a discussion that we wanted to talk about this and make some decisions on it. There will be a third option that I will be adding on to this that are going to actually be listed as action items. And those will be items that are coming up that we need to either have a refresher that it's on our action plan and we need to be doing it, or we need to be making decisions. I could certainly see if we are planning a meeting, and it doesn't even have to be with the town, if we were having a meeting where the board wanted to meet with a potential partner in March, we probably would have it on the agenda in February to make some clear directions to the people who are going to be having that meeting. What are some of the key points that we would like to make sure are handled? So as we know, nobody makes decisions outside of the board. The direction has to be directed by the board. So those types of things would be listed as action items, and then that would be, people would move forward with that. So I think that there's going to be a lot of discussion, be it how do we do next steps on the action item? What are some of the overall big picture discussions we want to have? Strategic planning is going to be a key piece where we're going to be having a lot of discussion, maybe just questions that we need to be thinking of. And ultimately, we don't want this to slow down the work of the board by not having committees, but we should be doing a more streamlined approach by having the discussions as a whole group.
Thank you, Sabrina. I would just like to add, in a sort of a very gentle way, I would love nothing more than to get a half dozen emails every month after this meeting, between this month and this meeting and next meeting. Why don't we do this? Why don't we do that? If you notice, maybe I'm a little more sensitive, but nearly everything is upcoming from Sabrina. We approve or disapprove. We're reacting. I'd like to see a proactive, somebody reading the action plan and saying, okay, we've got quarterly meetings. When are they going to be? Instead of waiting for Sabrina to tell us what the story is. Just a small, you put me in this position, so yes. Go ahead.
We actually have a policy number 99, which is the annual meeting plan as well as the multi-year meeting plan. And I'm wondering if that's, we created that in order to schedule on a month-by-month basis what we would have to deal with as committees. So for example, for organizational capacity, we had the policy review is always scheduled, I think, in
May.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I thought it was April, but it doesn't really matter. And we listed which one
It
each.
comes to the board in May.
Yes.
Yes.
So I'm wondering if we need to take a look at that policy and make sure we've scheduled on a month-by-month basis what elements of the action plan are showing up on what meetings.
You've got
So
a
that's
good
laid
memory,
out in
Lori.
advance, and we have a better, then we're not you're not waiting on us to email and say, hey, at February, we need to discuss the
Right.
quarterly meeting we're trying to get in March, because we already know what we need to do that, because it's already laid out in the action plan, and we just need to make sure we have a vehicle by which it comes through to the board agenda.
And if I can elaborate and clarify something that Maura said, I don't see me making an agenda as the CEO. I see me drafting the agenda as the board secretary And the items that are being put on the agenda are directly from the action plan with their dates and directly from the bylaw policy number 99, which tells us what our standing items are. So anything else that is added on are items that the board is bringing forward themselves. But I wouldn't expect the board to say what's happening with, item whatever on the action plan, because it has clear dates. So unless it's a case where the board members want to push up the discussion and get started earlier, the things that are on this section are not my agenda items. They are the board's agenda items because it's your policy, your bylaw, and your action plan.
I would remind you, Sabrina, it is not the CEO's agenda or the board agenda, it's the chair's agenda. That is in our
It's the board's
bylaws.
agenda.
It's the board's agenda.
When they accept it, but the chair presents the agenda. Sabrina does 99% of the work for me, but eventually I'm responsible for this agenda. There's a deadly silence, eh?
I believe that it is a board's agenda. Yes, it is the chair who's presenting it. Any member of the board can add to it, and it is the board who approves it and asks the chair to facilitate the agenda.
Sorry, I had my, what's his name, book upstairs. All right, we've had enough argument, haven't we?
What you call it?
Well, discussion, Jesse. I mean, after all, it keeps you awake, doesn't it? Let's move on to other business. The first item is the Q4 finance report for 2020. And here I have to call on Sabrina again. You have, and we have received this finance report 21-01. Anything you want to add to what you have in the report? And I have a few questions.
I don't really have anything to add to the report. I think it's what we expected. Just to clarify that even though this is the fourth quarter report, take your numbers cautiously because the final quarter is actually still open with the town. They will be doing a final number on things in the coming weeks. And then, of course, the audit will follow, and that's when we have official numbers.
Thank you. But I would point out on your report, Sabrina, go back up again to section D. That first sentence, the budget variance report is attached, but is not an unaudited record. That means it has been audited.
No, it's not the unaudited record, which will come when they have actually closed the year. This is just where we were on December 31st, but the actual fiscal year hasn't closed yet with the town. We still have a number of invoices that will always be backdated for the year.
Bear with me for a second. Let me read that again. It is not an unaudited record. Therefore, you are saying it is an unaudited. It is an audited record.
Usually in January, we present the unaudited record, which is after the town has closed the year, but has not gone through the auditor.
Yeah,
This is,
Sabrina,
yes, I understand what you're saying.
It is an unaudited.
Okay.
It is an unaudited. Am I not correct?
Yes, it's poorly written. It should have said this is not the closing unaudited record.
No, all you have to do is take out the word not. It is
Okay.
an unaudited. Nobody has audit. We understand that. But does everyone understand what I'm saying?
I think there's in fact three reports that will come through. This one is the not final unaudited, then there's the final unaudited, and then there's the audited.
Yes.
And I think the language is just confusing all of that, but I think we understand that there's actually going to be three. We're going to see December 31st in three different ways.
It doesn't matter. We've got a report in our hands that Sabrina has given us. It has not been audited. That's as simple as that.
That's true.
Thank you. Anything else to say, Sabrina?
Nope, not unless there were questions.
Yes, there are. Does anyone have any questions of Sabrina? Any questions on the unaudited variance report? Any questions on the reserve, the report of the reserve? You ready, Sabrina?
Mhm.
Thank you. This item E, the reserve account. I brought this up before. This is December 31st. Those are the same figures that you gave us for September 30th.
That's right.
That is not correct. That should for proper advice to a board, you through good friends should be telling me that we have 109,367 plus accrued interest. No point in telling me what the damn thing is and let me figure out what it is.
Well, as of the date, the matured for our board reserves only mature every 18 months.
But
So
you can
it will
calculate-
be
you
the
can
same number.
calculate-
We don't calculate the reserve, or we do not calculate the interest until it is accrued. If I was to say that there is accrued interest and we pull the money out tomorrow, we've lost that interest. So our account is $109,362.76 until they give us the interest and we roll over the GIC for another investment.
A good business decision on our part would, if the amount of money was an issue, I will want to know what that GIC is worth today, not what it's going to be worth.
That is today's rate.
A rate, yes, if it's 3%, 1%, you can calculate it. Anyone can calculate approximately within $1 or $2 what the thing's worth today.
The price that's there is what it is worth, and stating that it matured on a date so that you know that it's been updated from the last one. It will not be updated for another 18 months.
Well, that didn't make sense. You said mature date. Do you mean 2020?
The next date that it will mature will be in 2021, and the other one will mature in 2022. So we will see no changes on these for 1 year and 18 months.
Are you saying that the finance department cannot tell us what our GIC is worth?
The finance department has nothing to do with our GIC. That is in the bank, and TD will not give us interest until it matures at the end of the contract.
I understand they will not give us interest. I just received a notice from my bank today saying that I have a GIC maturing such and such, but as of today, as of the end of the year, it's worth so much. Look, I appeal to anyone who's been in business. Tell me what it's worth when you make the investment. You know that, be it $100,000. But to make a decision on the use of that money, you need to know what it's worth if it has not matured.
And if I can just say, I think it's worth exactly the amount of which you've invested until you actually cash. So Sabrina's right. You're getting whatever the number is, $106,000. That's what it's worth until the date it's cashed, and then you find out the total that it's the value.
And if we cash it before the next maturity date, that is the number.
That I understand. Okay, I've got a question for you. Not necessarily for Sabrina, but she will have something to say about it. We have these two reserves, $126,000 and change. What should we do with them?
Are they not?
They're not open for us to do anything with them other than use them for our expansion needs.
Is that defined someplace?
Yes. It was funds that were given to us originally from the Ellie Shore Foundation and have been in our holdings waiting to be able to expand this building. And they should be used for some form of, in the past, it would have been our development charges contribution, but it is specifically to our investment and enhancement in the building.
Enhancement in the building. Would painting inside
That
cover
is a town responsibility. I don't know why we would want to pay for that.
Supposing we wanted to fix the wall in the gallery.
That is not what it's for. It's not an expansion need. It is designed around us expanding. It was what was left over for building the building. So it is expansion.
So we're sitting in this $100,000 and something indefinitely until the town decides what they're going to do.
It is our portion that we have been saving for that purpose. Yes.
We're
The
going to
board
sit-
has the right to go and change what the intention is for items at any point. It would be through bylaws. It would be going back to the town. We can make decisions that way. But this is in reserve as a land reserve fund to be able to purchase land, purchase an expansion, or our specific contribution, which until the change that Lori spoke of this earlier in the meeting, we used to be required to put in 10% of development charges. It's no longer required that we put in 10%, but we would assume the council would be looking for us to be putting in some portion of a contribution on any expansion. Usually that ends up being the interior needs.
Well, if it's restricted to what the town does, why don't we just give the money back to the town?
It was never in the town's hand. It's always been the library board.
Yeah, I know.
We
Well,
could.
why don't we just give it to the town and say, look, use it to the way it was designed, enhancement of the building.
It's exactly what we're doing. It's sitting in our reserves, waiting for us to be able to expand our buildings, be it Ellie Shore, Craigleith, or some other site, or interior needs that would be needed as part of that expansion.
Does
I
anyone
can
else-
bring documentation forward at a future meeting if this is something the board wants to talk about.
No, it's a bit of a personal thing with me, actually, because I know the way reserves are generally done or have been done. If this money was given to the Ellie Shore Library with the express purpose of enhancing or fixing or improving or buying new things, we're not going to do that with $100,000. Why don't we give it to the town and let them do it? They're going to buy the building. We're not going to buy a building or land.
I think, Mr. Chair, this is a much larger discussion and fits under the vibrant spaces discussion. The discussion we had 2 years ago was that we were going to raise $1 million of funds, and we were identifying that we were already 1/10 of the way there,
You know,
based on us needing to bring something to the table when we went to council and said that we wanted to have a $5 or $8 million investment in new buildings.
understand.
And
but
that
we're
was
not-
something
we're
that
not in the
counselors,
fundraising business now.
well, it's not about the fundraising business. This predates that, and this has always been about the expansion. It was identified in the 2014 strategic plan well before me, that is when this money was invested, was to ensure that when a new building and the purchase of 177 Bruce Street happened, that we were going to have a pot of money set aside to be able to meet the contribution that our council would ask for us to do. So this is not a new fund. This is not newfound money. This is something that we have been holding on to and collecting interest over the years, waiting for the board and council to come to a point to expand.
It wouldn't even be as well identified as it is now if I had not brought up this subject about 4 years ago, 3 years ago, 4 years ago with Ruth and say, I want to know what these reserves are. And I finally got a figure that tells me I got 109, we agreed in this $126,000 over which we have control.
It's been in our control since I started here in 2017. It's a
know, and I was
TD and
there
it's in the
before
name of
you.
the board.
I was there before you. Anything else on the finance report? Or any part of it, Laurie?
Well, my only question is, would it be, I know Sabrina, in the past, you put together context for what these funds were for and how they were secured. And since we have a number of new members on the board, maybe it's useful for us to see that again. Because I think if this is something that the board needs to discuss, we need to have much better handle on what Morris's concerns might be. But we need background information in order to be able to even discuss that discussion Morris seems to want to have.
Yes, I can do that. I'm trying to remember. I think it was about 2 years ago we brought that forward, so I can pull that report and update that information.
And I have the similar information in an email from Ruth explaining the situation to me at the time. It predates what Sabrina had.
Julie Payette resigned.
Who?
The Governor General, Julie Payette resigned.
Did you hear that?
Breaking news.
Julie Payette resigned.
Oh,
Oh,
Great.
Let's move on.
Mr. Chair, I have to step away just for a
Yes,
moment.
I saw that, Rob. Yeah, yeah.
Okay, I'll be right back.
No problems. We'll be here for a while. Okay. Anything else on finance? Okay, moving on, if I may, the continuous improvement report 2021, where is it? I never read these things. 21-03, yeah. Continuous improvement report. Where's Sabrina? There you are.
Okay, so this is one of the 2 reports that actually are on the document, our bylaws in number 99 that say that we're going to bring forward every January, this and then the next item with our workplace violence compliance report. So each year, the Health and Safety Committee will look at the goals of the year and see what it is that we want to be able to achieve for ongoing improvements. Some of these are dictated by the ministry, some are by the situation in the building, and some have been items that have come up along our year. So this report has 2 main pieces. The first is we look at the 2020 and we identify what we have achieved. And we have achieved most of our items. Some things, of course, we didn't have opportunities to move forward with some of our ergonomic work just because of the limitation on vendors to be able to do some work in the building. And then we've also had some additional successes that we identified, including the fact that we worked within the health and safety terms of reference. And then, of course, the big one is that we managed the COVID-19 pandemic service model without incident, both to the public as well as to our staff. And when we are looking at our staff, we're looking at not only the physical health of our staff, but as well the mental health and wellness of them. So that would be the first portion. I'm not sure if there's specific questions on that. Section D is the 2021 goals. Many of them are sort of our stock items where we want to make sure that we have 50% of our members certified. We want to have our ongoing training with our staff. And then we do have some items that are new items and will be addressed this year, including our semi-annual management inspection. We limited last year, wanted to do this, but we limited how many people would be going between buildings just from a cross-contamination potential issue. That's something now that we know more about COVID, of course, we're able to continue and actually achieve that. Our museum-specific health and safety plan has been something that has really come out of all of the work that was done on remediation. So having identified what our potential hazards are in the building, we are working to assure that the building, both from the staff's end as well as council's maintenance end, never returns to the state that it was in. And there are quite a number of health and safety matters, both from the radon as well as mold, spores, and safe storage of archival materials that are happening. And then there is a plan being developed on how to bring in new materials safely and at what point in years we know there are the potential of hazards from environment that we need to address. We know that mold will bloom at certain times of the year, different mold blooms at different times. So it's those types of things we're looking and watching for, so that again, we're catching something very early and not getting back to where we were. The main thing, of course, that shut down the building was not the fact that there was mold blooms, because that is fairly standard. It was the lack of equipment to be able to purify the air, and then, of course, the radon. So both of those now have been invested in our building, and the radon has been remediated and is being maintained. So we don't anticipate there being main issues, but a good health and safety plan is always assuming that the worst can happen and finding a way not to have that happen through mitigation. Additionally, we're working with the town, and this is one of the few items that is outside of us specifically, but working with the town for the annual and semi-annual inspection specifically of CHD. We do similar things here at Ellie Shore, but the work with the town on the depot is really about assuring, again, that we don't go backwards to what happened in 2019 in October when we had to shut down the facility. And then our standard operating procedures, again, around CHD. So you can see that's a big piece is now that we've re-put the building together, we've invested in the equipment, we've identified what we have, and we've identified what are potential hazards, really building out a strong program to assure that this is well maintained and monitored. And then our last item, we assume will be on for most of 2021, if not all of 21 and into 22, but is to review quarterly all of our COVID-19 procedures and update as new information comes along. We do know that there's been quite a lot of new information coming from time to time, and we don't want to say that because we have a COVID-19 policy or procedure on how to do something, that is an indefinite decision. We need to keep coming back and making sure that we're not missing any new information and changing and updating appropriately. As Lori did mention earlier, our documents are again being used by the OLSs, which is fantastic on our end to know that not only has Grey Bruce Health Unit told us we have great documents, keep working in them and doing the job that we're doing, but it is being used as a primer or a baseline document for other libraries to be able to cannibalize. And I regularly pass out my documents now in Word version so people don't have to do nearly as much hacking through to try to steal them. We would rather have people use them and give us feedback on what they've added and what we should be looking at as well. So this is going to be another big year for health and safety, COVID specific, but really focusing on some of the key issues we've had with the depot as well.
Questions of Sabrina? I don't hear any. I don't have any. Maybe you'd move on to the violence compliance report.
So the next one is our violence compliance report. Again, this is an item that is in our annual agenda to be able to hit. The areas that we are required to review from a health and safety framework would be these 8 items. And then I have again identified what our main pieces are. This year, actually, if we were to take COVID out, we would have had nearly no issues. We've had 5 verbal aggressive verbal violence, and these are not just the people who say, I don't want to wear a mask. These are people who get quite aggressive, that usually a number of staff have to come out, that we may be reporting to the police, that we are kindly, gently, and then maybe less gently informing them that they need to leave the building. So this is not just the typical complaint of wearing a mask. These are people who are verbally and potentially physically aggressive. So we had 5 such cases in 2020, all about mask wearing. None of them identified themselves as having a medical exemption. 2 of these actually stated that it was their political right to make a statement known and wanted to make sure it was loudly known across the building that we were taking away their Charter of Rights and Freedoms by making them wear a mask. 4 of them were before the town's bylaw. 1 was just after the town's bylaw was passed, but really was the same situation of a person returning. And in 1 case, one of the people that we then told that they had to leave the building did actually go to council and made deputations, as well as filed a bylaw complaint against us, which I have heard nothing since, but I assume will go away, given that it was a moot point that they did not meet a medical exemption. And if they did, they didn't state such to us, because we do have options for people who have a medical exemption for wearing masks. It's something that our staff are dealing with. Beyond just the incident of something being verbally violent, you have to keep in mind that it is a situation then that the staff need to have the time to be able to shake that off before they work with the next patron. We don't ever want what happens with one to then be taken out onto the next person. So that's why we address these. We do know we're in customer service. We do know that you have to have a backbone to work in customer service. But at the same point, nobody should be screamed at and told that they're evil incarnate because we're making them wear a mask. Another situation was a very difficult one for the staff, and this was a mental health situation. We do know this is a commonplace in libraries to have mental health matters, especially in more urban settings. This was a patron that was unknown to the staff, which made it a little bit more difficult. They came in towards the end of the evening, were very upset, needed to do work on the computers. The computer then timed out on them because end of day, it will physically shut down. They were informed that it would only have a few minutes left. And in the process of yelling at the staff, this particular patron said that they were going to kill themselves because they couldn't take the stress of their life anymore. They then did the mental wellness check information with the police to make sure everything was handled in that way. But obviously, that is a situation that is very upsetting for staff, being concerned, not knowing who it is, making a report, wondering if they handled everything the way it should have been handled. So those are things that we have debriefed, worked through with our staff meetings, so that those types of situations, whether they are as extreme as that, or even just the lesser agitated person, that staff are always better prepared, but also that they know how to do a mental wellness check. And I think that has been one of the key things in 2020. Staff have received more mental wellness check information, both for themselves and for how to file with the police and our health unit if needed, because it seems to be an increasing issue in the community. We know that our youth are extremely stressed because of school online, and they're acting out in ways that we haven't seen before. We know our seniors are very isolated and not seeing the same senior even asking for hold after a while. Staff become concerned. Is this person okay? And some of the staff have taken it upon themselves, when at work, just to call a person and say, hey, we haven't heard from you in a while. Do you need a book? Because they're concerned that some of our people in the community who are isolated and single residents might not be receiving what they need. So the wellness check is a key focus, I think, in 2020.
Good. A lot of stuff. A lot of information. Anyone any questions of Sabrina? Okay. Now, you have some film you're going to show us.
We do. So we have Hannah on. She's going to load up 2 trailers, but we just wanted to let everybody know that we are, drum roll please, releasing the next 2 films in our Real History film series. So as you know, we have won numerous awards for our films to date. We have 3 films that were originally released in 2018. We had another 2 films that were released that were our VR in 2019 and 2020, very early 2020, as well as a making of the VR that was in 2019. So this will be the next 2. We anticipate it will have just as much play in our community and impact of people learning about our community, as well as the impact globally. And we hope that it will continue to be a good example of how library collections library local history and museum collections can come together to build new materials for a library that then can circulate as the newest local history content. So we're quite impressed that the idea of a GLAM has really, I think, boiled into this real history film to show how all of us have come together to create new service models that didn't exist before the museum was brought into Blue Mountains Public Library.
Well, the importance of the Niagara Escarpment, it's a world biosphere. Very few places in the world have an escarpment.
Today, everybody can walk all 900 kilometers of the Bruce Trail.
Essential to this is the maintenance of a continuous natural corridor so that wildlife can move back and forth.
It's really, truly important to teach our children what came about, why this is so precious.
So the next one Hannah will play now is on the fossils, and both of these are being launched in an event on February 13th. It will be a virtual event, but we are still moving forward with our launch date that we had planned about 6 months ago. So if you are interested, you can go to our website and you can register for the launch event. So fossils trailer.
We're going back about 450 million years. The Earth was a very, very different place at that time. We probably wouldn't recognize it were we able to take a time machine and go back that far.
The biggest animals in the sea at that time were cephalopods, specifically nautiloids with their extremely long shells.
The Craigleith area specifically has a unique deposit called the Collingwood Shale, and it's just absolutely abundantly full of fossils.
All right, so if you are interested in registering for the actual event, it is on the website and our event calendar, and certainly feel free to share with others. Space is limited, but we usually can fit about 100 people into our Zoom meetings, so we have filled up our meetings in the past.
Mr. Chair, I'd like it known that I am not the star of the movie about fossils.
What? Sound's gone.
I did mute a number of people when we were playing because I could hear some background. So if you are muted, you may want to unmute yourself.
Well, then I won't repeat what I was going to say. Okay, are we done with the movies for now? Those are good. They're short, but they're good.
It's just the trailers. The movies are much longer.
Oh yeah, I was wondering. Right. No, they're good. Any comments, thoughts, criticisms, or whatever?
Sounds exciting.
Yeah, it does.
The Depot again has done fantastic work on that with our partners, Mountain Goat Film.
Yes, good. Okay, I would like somebody to move that this board receive any discussions such as they were, any discussions we've had about these other business items. Someone to move? Rob, seconder? All in favor? Carried. Okay, moving on if we may. Round table, anything to bring up here? That's not a very good way of saying it. Anything to mention here? Anything of a general information, etc.? Joanne, you're smiling. Why are you smiling?
I'm wondering if I should pan my view from the window with the CN Tower in there, but it's not that important.
Okay. All right. Anything from you, Sabrina? We've leaned on you quite a bit. Okay.
Nope, I have no updates.
All right, thank you. Well, then we can skip any motion. We don't need anything there. Key messages. Any good key messages this week, this month, I mean? Comments, suggestions? Can you put up what you have, Sabrina? Since I didn't, yeah, there we go.
I didn't see anything unless I missed it. Was there anything about the launch of the films?
No, and actually I will add that on with the link now that we have the links.
Okay.
Well, I don't think anyone can complain. We do keep people involved with what's going on, one way or the other. Some things we've done, some other, labor, etc. Any comments, questions, or is everyone happy with these key messages, which will go out shortly?
So the CEO performance appraisal, I just said that the board did it. I don't know if you wanted to state anything or if you just want to leave it as it was done.
No, I thought about that. Just leave it the way it is. If anyone wants to know, they would contact a board member or me, board member. And which I don't, nobody's ever done that, have they? Not that I'm aware of. So I'll leave it the way it is. Everyone okay with that? Thank you. Would someone like to?
I was muted, so you didn't hear me.
No,
I actually think we should put some of those, I forget how many motions, but in terms of the CEO performance appraisal, that we commended Sabrina for a couple of things. I think there's some merit in including that, the motions in this key message. I'd have to, I don't have handy the actual wording. But I think they're in the motions. The other thing I thought we should mention is that we have decided to continue to live stream and post the board meeting so long as we continue to meet virtually.
Everyone happy with that?
Oh, that one needs to come off.
In fact, there's something here that says the chair and vice chair were elected in November. I think maybe that's a carryover from the November key messages.
It was, and I didn't know if you wanted to leave it on, given that it was the very last act, which means now you have your new people in for your full meeting. We can take it off because it is a repeat.
Yeah. I don't think it
And the
needs
same thing with the standing committees.
I suppose those are, well. That word is not spelled, that's in yellow, it's not spelled correctly.
No.
Well, I think they're good.
Okay. I will put in the live streaming that the board is continuing through the pandemic during the period that the board is unable to meet face-to-face. And I will put in the link for that. And I have pulled the first of the resolutions. I will grab the second resolution, which is commend the CEO on the excellent relationships she has developed as demonstrated by the responses received from external partners surveyed for this evaluation.
Well, maybe make it after the 2020 year, comma, and commended. ED. Yeah. Very good. Maybe we should encourage, encourage the public to lock on to live streaming. I mean, if we're doing it, yeah, we should encourage them.
I'll clean that one up, and we'll also use that on our February board corner. So I can have the board corner talk about the continuation of the live streaming and push for people to visit that, partake.
If nothing else, we might get a few more lookers. Someone to move that we approve the release of these key messages. I need a motion. Someone, Lori to move, seconder. We won't get the, Dorothy, thank you. I was going to say we wouldn't get the motion, the key messages out unless somebody puts a hand up. All in favor? Well, actually, well, I was tied for a minute there. I was worried that I may have to turn it down. Carried. Next meeting is February the 18th at 2 o'clock. That's the scheduled board meeting. And I do encourage you, if you have some items that you would like me to add to the agenda, some items, some things you'd like me to bring up, please contact me and or Sabrina, and we'll see what we can do. Anything else? Hearing nothing else, I now move that this board now adjourns at 4:16.